Hello guys, welcome to Ferdinand tutorials. I hope you're doing well. Now the video you're going to be watching is actually a video that I recorded while teaching on Zoom. This video is actually a paid video. You understand? For you that is watching, is a paid video. A lady approached me earlier this week and she told me to help teach her students on biology. So I talked today on heredity and evolution. So that is to say that this video is completely sponsored by Gradely. Gradely is an educational platform where you tutor your children, where they guide you on different concepts. You need a personal jam tutor, they are there for you. You need a place where you can learn at your convenience, they are there for you. They are the best place, you understand, to get your knowledge virtually. So they are a trusted and reliable platform. That's why I have to even accept the job in the first place. So let's see what I did today, and then share your thought about it. If you have a question, don't forget to ask. Let's move to the video.
Can you hear me now? Please use the chat box if you can hear me. Use the chat box. Use the chat box. Use the chat box. Okay, you can hear me. Thank God. Oh, finally. I'm so sorry for the time that we wasted already. So let's get back to it. I'm happy that you can hear me finally. Okay, I'll start again. I'll believe that you didn't hear me since I started. So we'll go again. So I said I will be talking on heredity and evolution. I've introduced myself. I said my name is Buchku Kingsley, and I'm a final year student of biochemistry in Nigerian University. So by the grace of God, I'll be talking to you guys on heredity and evolution. Now, this class is going to last for 60 minutes. And as much as possible, I want us to, focus on it, give out your time, and hopefully this will be the best thing you've ever seen. Now, in this class, we're going to be talking about concept of heredity. We're going to be looking at the definition of terms. We're going to be looking at the Mendel's experiment. We'll also be looking at monohybrid and dihybrid cross. How does monohybrid cross occur and dihybrid cross? What ratio are we looking at? Are you getting it? So these are some of the things we'll be focusing on in this class, and I want you to give me your attention as we progress. Now, I want you to observe something. For those of you that live maybe in the rural areas, or those of you that have been to your village, now, when you observe all the coconut trees in your surrounding, you will actually notice something. Now, they look somewhat the same, not exactly same, not exactly alike, but they look somewhat the same, and yet their children do not look exactly like their parents. Now, the question I'm popping up is, do they? If you think they do, you can use the chat box. For those of you that have seen a pineapple tree, a mango tree, do you think the children look exactly like the parent? If they do, tell me in the chat box. Now, they look similar according to my slide here, but they are not alike. Now, we'll be studying about this variation, how it occurs in hereditary and what? Evolution. Now, at the end of this class, you'll be able to understand the meaning of heredity. I know you can hear me. You can also write down. I believe you can hear me now, so you can use the chat box too. So at the end of this class, we'll be talking about the meaning of hereditary and the different terms associated with it. You'll be understanding what is meant by monohybrid and dihybrid cross. Not just understanding it, but you know how to cross each of them, get their phenotypic and genotypic ratio. Please, I want everyone to mute their mic. Please mute your mic. It's very important that you mute your mic. Thank you. Let's use the chat box. If you have a question, use your chat box. So that's what we'll be doing. Now let's go into the course general. Now, in the simplest word, heredity refers to the passing of traits or characteristics through gene from one generation to the other. That is to say, the ability of a parent to transfer a characteristics from the parent to the offspring. The ability of a characteristics to be transferred from the parent to the offspring. That's what we call what? Heredity. Are you getting it? It refers to the passing of this character. I say, please expand the slide. Can this? Okay, sorry. Okay. Okay, so now for those of us that actually understand what I mean by heredity, I say it's the transfer of character, from parents to their generation, like that's the offspring. Generally in biology, we call parents, they are our, pedigree. You begin to look at your ancestors, their pedigree. Now, in the children, we call them the progeny. So when you transfer characteristics from the parents to the offspring. That's what we're looking at, what? In heredity. Now, in this transmission of characters, it moves, especially when we're looking at the humans, it moves through a process what we call the DNA. Are you getting it? Now, the DNA actually contains three major components. Now, we begin to look at, the nucleobase, we begin to look at the pentose sugar, we begin to look at the phosphate moiety. Are you getting it? I hope you're following. Please, if you're following, use the chat box, use the chat box, use the chat box. Okay. Okay, so that is it in the heredity. Now, I want us to actually look at the different terms in this heredity. Now, let's look at the gene. We said they are the basic units. Okay, you can hear me. Okay, yes, I love that. I love that. I'm happy now that you can hear me. If you have any difficulty, please do well to let me know. Do well to let me know. Use the chat box. That's the way we communicate here. So that's good. So now, let's look at the definition of terms related to heredity. Now you begin to look at what we call the gene, look at alleles, you look at chromosomes, you look at the genotype, the phenotype, now the homozygous, heterozygous, dominant, and recessive alleles. I will explain these terms to your understanding. Now let's look at it in full. Now when we're talking about the gene, we say that it's the basic unit of inheritance. It is the basic unit of inheritance. Just like when you are defining a cell, they ask you what is cell. You say that cell is the basic unit of life. So when we're looking at gene, we're looking at it as the basic unit of inheritance. Just like every living organism starts with cell, every form of heredity in the living organism starts with what? Gene. So just as you say, when you're talking about the level of organization of life, you say from cell level to the tissue level, from the tissue level to the organ level, from the organ level to the system level, then to the organism. Same here in the heredity. First off, we look at the gene. Are you getting it? It's the basic component. It consists of the sequence of DNA, which is what? The genetic materials. Are you getting it? Now, it said that genes can mutate. Now, when we're talking about mutate, we're talking about mutation. Now, when you hear about mutation, I want you to write it down. Mutation simply means the sudden change in the DNA sequence of a gene. Now, remember I told you that there are three components of a DNA. I mentioned the ribose sugar, which is the pentose sugar. I mentioned the what? The nucleobases. And I mentioned the phosphoric acid moiety. These are the three components of the DNA. So when the DNA doesn't compose each of these, it is not complete. It's not called what? A DNA. So for us to call this a DNA, it must contain this what? Three components. I don't know if you're getting what I'm saying. So if you're following, use the chat box too. And also don't forget to write down. Now, that is gene. We say it's the basic unit of inheritance. For every inheritance to occur, it must start from the word gene. It must be there. It contains that basic unit of what? Inheritance. Now, let's look at alleles. We say that there are alternative forms of a gene. Now, we've established what a gene is. Now, we're looking at, is it alternative? Is it not alternative? So when you hear about alternative forms of a gene, we're looking at what? Alleles. Now, they affect same characteristics. Are you getting it? In alternative forms. Remember, when we're talking about characteristics, you can also call characteristics as what? As a trait. You can also call it a character. Now, they are located on the same place of the what? Chromosome. They are located on the same place in the what? In the chromosome. Now, let's look at what a chromosome is. Now, we say that they are thread-like structures made up of what? Nucleic acids, DNA. Now, remember that we have two major types of nucleic acid. I don't just want to talk about this thing I'm teaching you here and I will leave the rest. No, I want to make sure that I touch every concept that is for you to know. So when we are talking about nucleic acid, there are two major types of nucleic acid. Now we have the DNA and we have the what? RNA. Now the DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. RNA is ribonucleic what? Acid. DNA is found in the living system. Are you getting it? DNA is found in the living system. Meanwhile, RNA is found only in the what? In the viruses. I hope you're following. So that is it about the nucleic acids. Now, we said that there are thread-like structures made up of what? Nucleic acids and proteins. Oh, I hope you cannot hear me. Okay. Hello, I hope you can hear me. Okay, let's continue. Now, we said that they are thread-like structures made up of nucleic acids, DNA, and what? And protein. Okay, which one do you want me to explain again? Just write it down. When you ask your question, please be specific. I will explain again. That's my job here. Let's mute our mic. Let's mute our mic. If you are joining, you mute your mic. If you are joining, you mute your mic. Thank you. Okay, someone is asking question. Okay. Okay. Now let me explain. Someone mentioned about alleles. I said, I hope you understood gene. I said they are basic units of inheritance. Now, when we're talking about alleles, they are alternative forms of a gene. Now, let's look at it this way. Now, we said that they are located on the same place in the chromosome. Now, I told you something in chromosome when I was explaining. I said that they are thread-like structures made up of nucleic acids and what? And protein. Now, when I was explaining that chromosome, I mentioned that we have two major types of nucleic acid. We have the DNA and we have the what? The RNA. Now, in the allele, when we mean that they are alternative forms of gene. Now, remember that when we're talking about alternative forms of gene, we said that this gene is a basic unit of inheritance. That is to say, when this particular gene for a particular character is not present, allele is there to fit in. That's what we're talking about, alternative forms of gene. So when there is absence of, complete gene to actually carry the genetic inheritance, there is an allele there to fit in. That's when we're looking at the what? Alternative forms of gene. I don't know if you understand what I mean. Please mute your mic. If you are joining, mute your mic, please. Please mute your mic. Okay, we'll continue. Now, that is it about the allele and gene. Now, let's look at chromosome as I was saying. I said they are mostly found in the nucleus of the cell. They carry the hereditary or the what? The genetic information. Are you getting it? Now, without the chromosome in the body of a living organism, there is not going to be a carrier of any genetic information. So meanwhile, your father gave birth to you and, you still, you are fair in complexion, or you have the ability to roll the tongue, or you have the ability to, wink, close one eye and leave the other open, or you have every other characteristics. Now, remember that it is this chromosome that also carry this what? Hereditary material in form of genes. Meanwhile, we say that genes are basic units of inheritance. We say that allele are alternative form of that gene. We say that chromosomes are thread-like structure. They are just like thread. Are you getting? They are thread-like structure. They are mostly found in the what? In the nucleus of that cell. Now, what are the functions? They carry the hereditary information in the form of what? In the form of gene. That is that for chromosome. Now, when we're talking about genotype, I want to explain genotype with phenotype together. Now, when we're talking about genotype, we say that they are the genetic constitution of an organism. Are you getting it? Simply put, you can say that they are the genetic what? Constitution of their organism. That is to say, they are what the organism is being made up of. Meanwhile, you are not seeing the genotype of an individual, like you are not seeing the, the effect. But these are the things that constitute the makeup of this particular organism. So my ability to actually know if I can be able to say, okay, I think like, an intelligent person. I am good when it comes to mathematics. I'm good when it comes to number. I can dictate faster. I can write faster. I am this, I am that. All these characters, they are composed in your what? In your genotype. Are you getting it? They are the constitution of your total organism. Meanwhile, phenotype, I said that you cannot see genotype. Genotype are not physical. They are inside. They are the constitution. Are you getting it? They are the constitution. What makes you up? As you are tall, as you are fair, as you can be able to decipher things without someone being able to tell you. That's your genotype. Be able to say, okay, I can do this at this point. Nobody is seeing your genotype. But the phenotype is the physical appearance. Are you getting it? Your ability to say, okay, I am fair. I can be able to roll my tongue. There is something inside that makes you to be able to roll your tongue. That is your genotype. Now, I am seeing the tongue that you are rolling. That is phenotype. I don't know if you're actually getting what I'm saying. So phenotype is the physical constitution. Are you getting it? Phenotype is the physical constitution, the physical expression of an organism. I say that it's the description of the actual physical characteristics of an organism, or the expressed form of the what? Of the genotype. So meanwhile, genotype constitutes the internal. Phenotype is what? Showing what is in the internal. I don't know if you're following. Please use the chat box. I love when I'm teaching. People are telling me that they are understanding or they are not. So that I know I'm talking to, group of persons. So that is it about genotype and phenotype. Now let's look at dominant alleles and recessive alleles, since we've already, explained what an allele is. Okay, she's following. Yes, that's what I love. When you're following, write it down so that I can be able to know that I'm carrying people along. So that is it. Now let's look at dominant alleles and recessive allele. Now we said that when an allele affects the phenotype of an organism, then it is a dominant. Are you getting it? It represents a capital letter. Recessive, he said that when it affects the genotype in the absence of a dominant allele, it's called the recessive allele. I will explain. Let me explain. Now, remember that we have what we call tallness and shortness. We have an individual who is tall. We have another person who is short. Okay, let me look at the chat box. Okay, you are following. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Let's continue. Now, remember that we have an individual who is tall. We have another person who is short. Now, let's say that Obi is a very tall young man and Ada is a very short lady. I'm sorry if you're answering Ada. I didn't mean to insult you. So sorry. So now Ada is a very short lady. Now, remember that there is something that caused Ada to be short. Naturally, Ada is not expected to be short, but there are some constitution that makes Ada to be short and Obi to be tall. Now, let's look at it. Now, when we are talking about a gene for tallness, we represent it with capital letter. And now, a capital letter simply means a dominant character, a dominant allele. Are you getting it? Because Ada is short, Obi is tall. That means Obi can overpower Ada. I don't know if you're getting it. Obi has the ability to what? Overpower Ada. That is to say that Obi is stronger than Ada because no matter how strong, Ada is, because she's short, Obi can be able to, overshadow her. Doctor say, hey, keep quiet there because Obi is taller and Ada is shorter. So Obi is dominant over Ada. So when we are writing, these dominant and recessive alleles, when we are using letters to, describe them, Obi, who is now tall, can be described as a capital letter, T. Ada, who is short, are you getting it? And is not dominant, so she's recessive. She's okay. You said I should lie down. Okay, I will lie down because Obi is taller than her. So Ada is now what? In small letter, small t. Obi, who is the overpower, who is the strongest, has what? Capital T. I hope you're following. So when we're talking about dominant and recessive, a dominant character is represented with what? A capital letter. You can say if you have white and red, white can be dominant over red. So what you do is that you say white can be capital R and red, which is recessive, can be small r. So between dominant and recessive character, whenever you see a character that is represented with capital letter, know that that character is what? Dominant. Are you getting it? When we are looking at dominant character, we're looking at tallness, we're looking at fairness, we're looking at, intelligence, all these things that are smart, that are sharp. We look at them as what? Dominant. I hope you follow it. Now, when we're looking at recessive are usually represented with small letters. So they are kind of maybe small t, shortness, maybe sickle cell anemia, small s, small s. Are you getting it? So when you see two letters, capital T, and you see small t after this class, you should be able to decipher that. Capital T simply means that this character is dominant. Small t simply means that this character is recessive. Capital A simply means that this character is dominant. Small a simply means that this character is what? Recessive. These are the two things I want you to understand after this class. So that is it about dominant and recessive allele. Now, let's look at homozygous and heterozygous. Now, when we're talking about homozygous, from my slide here, I said that each organism has two alleles for every gene. Now, remember that for this recessive, since is recessive and that is weak, let's use the word weak. When you hear about recessive, you understand that we're talking about what? Weakness. So we can say small t, because there is no way we can have only small t as a recessive character. Are you getting it? Each particular allele, occurs in twos. Are you getting it? So we can say small t as a recessive, and then as dominant, we say capital T, capital T. I don't know if you're following. So that is it. Now, if I say that I have a homozygous and I have a heterozygous, now each organism has two alleles for each gene. Are you getting it? There has two alleles for each gene. Each organism has two alleles for each gene. In homozygous, both alleles are the same. For example, you can have capital T, capital T. You can also have small t, small t. I don't know if you're getting it. When you're talking about homo simply means same, what looks alike. Are you getting it? They simply means what? Same, what looks alike. That's homo. So when we're talking about homozygous, it simply means character that looks alike. We can have capital T, capital T. We can have small t, small t. I don't know if you're getting it. So that is it about homozygous. So we can have capital A, capital A. We can have small a, small a. We can have capital S, capital S. We can have small s, small s. We can have capital R, capital R. We can have small r, small r. These are what? Homozygous. They look alike. So we're not looking at if it's dominant or recessive. No. what we're looking at is, are they alike? I've explained what a dominant character or dominant allele simply means. I've explained what a recessive allele means. Now I've explained homozygous. Now let's look at heterozygous. Now, without further ado, without someone going extra mile to explain, you should be able to understand that heterozygous simply means what? They are distinctive. They are not the same. Are you getting it? They are not what? The same. So we say that if two alleles are different from each other, then they are heterozygous in nature. Example is capital T small t. I don't know if you are following. Capital T small t is what? Is a heterozygous what? Character. Are you getting it? They are heterozygous in nature because they don't have two similar alleles. Are you getting it? They have alleles from what? Different from each other. Capital T is different from small t. So they are heterozygous. But homozygous is either small t, or capital T. So that is it about the definition of terms. Now let's continue to the next thing that we have here. Now let's look at Mendel's experiment. Mendel's experiment. Well, I want to explain monohybrid cross. I want you to give me your attention. Focus and give me your attention. Please, if you're following, use the chat box. Use the chat box. If you're following, use the chat box. Say I'm following. Use the chat box. Say I'm following so that I will know that I'm carrying everyone along. If you can't hear me too, say I can't hear you. And if you have your question, just be jotting it down. When it's time for Q&A, you ask your questions. Yes. I'm seeing, I'm following. Thank you. Oreoluwa. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that name well. Emmanuel Mukoma. Thank you. Okay, let's continue. Now, we're looking at Mendel's experiment. We're looking at, Aliyu, thank you. Let's look at Mendel's experiment. Let's look at the monohybrid cross and the dihybrid cross. Now, remember that these are questions that normally come up in JAM. Apart from that definition of terms, that you see once in a while, you see this monohybrid and dihybrid cross is another thing that, JAM usually bring out almost every year. So I want you to focus here and, follow me as I explain. Now, when we're talking about monohybrid cross, here is the cross between two plants which have one pair of contrasting character. For example, a cross between a tall pea plant and a short plant. Now, I want us to explain something. Please, if you are joining, I want you to mute your mic.
Wait.
Okay, sorry. Who is that? iPhone. Wait, let me unmute you. You want to say something? Hello. Okay, let's continue. I was talking about Mendel's experiment. I mentioned monohybrid cross. I told us that is the cross between two plants, which one have one pair of contrasting characters and the other have another pair of contrasting character. For example, a cross between a tall pea plant and a dwarf plant. Now, I've explained what we call homozygous, I've explained heterozygous, I've explained dominant allele, and I've explained recessive allele. Now, these four terms is what will guide us in both the monohybrid and dihybrid cross. So follow me as I go. Now, when I tell you that a tall pea plant should be represented with what? A capital letter. Are you there? A tall pea plant should be represented with a capital letter. So this meeting will be ending in 10 minutes. So when it ends, I want us to, join back. I'll be sending the link on the group chat so that we'll join back again. I'm so sorry for that. So now, when we're talking about a tall plant that's capital T. First, it is dominant because it has what? A capital letter. So when you hear about tallness, as I explained before, I told you it means what? A dominant character. And capital T simply means that it is what? It is homozygous. It doesn't have capital T small t, capital T. It simply means it is what? It is homozygous. I don't know if you're getting it. So when we say that two characters, let's say tallness and shortness cross together, are you getting it? If we have capital T, small t crosses together. Now, at the end of the day, we'll be having a particular character. Now, this capital T will now cross over to this small t. We'll be having a heterozygous what? Tallness. No longer homozygous, because the parents, which is the father, is what? Is homozygous in nature. Are you getting it? Homozygous and is dominant. The mother is what? Is homozygote, but she's recessive. So when these two plants cross together, we produce offspring that are what? That are heterozygous in nature. but they are tall. I don't know if you're getting it. The tallness is there because we have a gene for tallness, which is capital T. If you can follow me here, the gene for tallness, capital T, and the gene for shortness is what? Small t. So when these, two parents cross, we produce what? A heterozygous tallness. That is to say that the children are tall. In our dispensation, we call it average. And you get it in the biology, there's nothing like average or not average. It's either you are tall or you are short. So I want you to understand that too. So now when they cross, when the capital T cross with the small t, you begin to understand that we have a heterozygous tallness. That's capital T, small t. I don't know if you're getting it. That is for the first filial generation. Now there is another thing I want you to understand. There's what we call the F1 generation and the F2 generation. Now, when we're talking about the F1 generation, we're looking at the first generation that occurs, the first generation that, that just come up after the two parents met together. Now, if you're talking about the second filial generation, which is the F2 generation, they are the generation that comes, as a result of the offspring self-fertilizing each other. Are you getting it? So F2 generation arises as a result of the offspring of the F1 generation, like the F1 generation self-fertilizing each other. That's how the F2 generation come about. I don't know if you're getting it. So we have the F1 and we have the F2. F1 is as a result of the two parents crossing, producing the offspring. Those offspring, okay, let's say that your dad and your mom, after meeting, they produce you. You understand? After sexual intercourse, they produce you and other, of your siblings. Now you are the F1 generation. Are you getting it? As a result of your parents, having an intercourse to produce you. So you are the F1 generation. Now the F2 generation is you when you self-fertilize. Are you getting it? Which is not actionable. Because in plants self-fertilize, but in animals, we don't self-fertilize here. It's an abomination. It's something that is not okay. So now when you self-fertilize, you produce another children. Now those children is what? The F2 generation of your parents. I don't know if you're getting it. So if you understood what I just explained, you can use the chat box too, even though our meeting is almost ending, but use the chat box. So as I continue now, when the capital T crosses with the small t, now they produces a heterozygous tallness. A heterozygous. It is heterozygous because they have pair of contrasting characters. What are the pairs of contrasting character? Capital T and small t. That's tallness and shortness in one. That's why it is heterozygous. It is homozygous when it is either tall or short. We have homozygous tallness, homozygous shortness. Are you getting it? So we don't have anything like heterozygous shortness because the small t there is what is recessive. It cannot dominate. I hope you're following. So when we have this character, capital T, crosses with the small t, we have a heterozygous what? Tallness. Heterozygous tallness, not homozygous. Homozygous is the capital T. Another homozygous here is the shortness, small t, because they have the same characters, not pair of contrasting. But now in the F1 generation, we have a pair of what? Contrasting characters. And now at the end of the day, we are going to have 4 offspring in the F1 generation. And all of them are going to be capital T, small t, which is what? Heterozygous in nature. Are you getting it? Now, when they self-fertilize, look at here. If you can see my mouse, capital T, small t, then capital T, small t. Are you getting it? They are self-fertilizing. Now, when they self-fertilize, they will form the F2 generation. Now, there is a question Jam usually asks. They will ask you, what is the genotypic ratio and the phenotypic ratio of, this mate? What's the phenotypic and genotypic ratio of this mating? Now, you begin to understand that when we are looking at the phenotypic ratio, we are looking at what we can see. Genotypic is what I cannot see, but it is what makes up what I'm seeing. I don't know if you're following. So now when we are looking at this F2 generation, look up here. Now look at this genotype in F2 generation. When capital T small t crosses with capital T small t, we are going to have something. We are going to have capital T, like when this first T crosses with the first T here, we have capital T. When this first T here crosses with the small t, we have capital T small t. When this small t crosses with the capital T of the other parent, we'll be having capital T small t. Now, there are mistakes students do make. Now, because the small t is coming first, and now the capital T is at the other end of the parent, they will say small t, capital T. No, you don't say that. Remember, I told you that capital T is always dominant, and the small t is recessive. So there is no need bringing the recessive first before the dominant is not done. The dominant must always come, must always be in the number one, must always be in charge. So when this small t crosses with this capital T, we have capital T small t. And when this small t here crosses with this small t, we have small t small t. Are you getting it? Now the 4 offspring has been produced. We already have what? 4 offspring here. Now you begin to see that this capital T is a homozygous character. Small t, also a homozygous, but it's short. Now, capital T, small t, they are what? Heterozygous for tallness. Remember, because we have a dominant character superseded, so we call it what? A tallness. So we have 4 offspring here. Capital T is 1. If they ask you what is the phenotypic and genotypic ratio, now look at what you do. For the genotypic ratio, we are not seeing tallness or shortness. What we are seeing is letters. Are you getting it? For the genotype, okay, look at it here. For the genotype, when they ask you, what is the genotype or genotypic ratio of the F2 generation? Sometimes they don't add F2 generation. They'll just give you this capital T to cross with small t. They'll ask you, find the genotype. Now, you should be able to understand, at the end of this class, I want you to understand that when we're talking about genotype shouldn't be, gotten from the F1 generation. It is always gotten at the what? At the F2 generation. I don't know if you're getting it. So after, crossing, self-fertilizing, you're having capital T, you're having capital T, small t, you're having capital T, small t, you're having small t. So now the capital T is 1. Do we have any other capital T here? No. So capital T is 1. Now capital T, small t is 2. I don't know if you're getting it. Capital T, small t is 2. And small t is 1. Now small t is 1. So at the end of the day, you say is 1:2:1. Did you understand what I say? 1:2:1. Now, when we're talking about the phenotype, that is for the genotype. Now, when we're talking about the phenotype will not say that phenotype is what we can see. Phenotype is the physical expression, as I said earlier, is what I can see. So in my phenotype, I will no longer take capital T, I will no longer keep capital T different, keep capital T, small t different. Now keep small t different. Look at what I will do. I will either take tall or short. I told you in biology, what we only recognize is tallness or shortness. We don't want to know if it's heterozygous or homozygous. What we want to know is it tall or is it short? So I will stop this video here. I will continue again. So I will create a new link. You have to join in the group chat. Please, it's less than a minute. I don't want it to cut us on our way. So when I come back, we'll continue again. I told you that we have what we call dominant and we have what we call what? A recessive character. Dominant simply means I'm overpowering the recessive. Capital T is always dominant. So because we have capital T, we have one tall. Capital T small t is another tall, but it's a heterozygous tall. Are you getting it? It's a heterozygous tall because it has, a character of shortness in it. It is having a contrasting character. That's why it is called what? A heterozygous character. I hope you follow me. So this is another tallness. This is also another tallness. So here we have 3 tallness. Are you getting it? If they ask you phenotype, you already have 3 tallness. Now in shortness, you already have what? 1 short, small t. I hope you're following, please. So this is it. When they ask you phenotype and genotype, this is what it's all about. So I believe that you've understood this diagram here, this crossing, parent crossing parental generation to the F1 generation and then F2 generation, and how to get your phenotype and genotype. I hope you've gotten that. Now I want to move to the hybrid cross. Now let's look at the hybrid cross. Now look at the hybrid cross here. Now we said that it is the cross between 2 plants which have 2 pairs of contrasting characters. Now it takes into consideration alternative traits of 2 different characters. For example, a cross between 1 pea plant with round and green seeds and another pea plant with wrinkled and yellow seed. Now I want to say something. I told you that in F1 generation, that one of the observation, one of the conclusion, one of your deduction is this. You can say that in monohybrid cross, that the ratio of the phenotype is usually 3:1. The ratio of the genotype, 99% of the time, is usually 1:2:1. Now, at the end of the day, there are only 4 offspring produced in monohybrid cross. I hope you're following. I'm using it to come into this dihybrid now. But in dihybrid, you know what we're looking at? We're not looking at just 4 offspring. We're looking at total of 16 offspring being produced in the F2 generation. Are you getting it? We're looking at a total of what? 16 offspring being produced. Now here, do you know the ratio that we use? Here, they don't ask you what is the phenotype or genotype. No. What they ask you, what is the ratio of the dihybrid cross in the F2 generation? The ratio is usually 9:3:3:1. I said again, the ratio is usually 9:3:3:1, making it 9 plus 3, which is 12, 12 plus 3, which is 15, plus 1, which is what? 16. So now let's look at these two different plants. Now, remember, in monohybrid, you're only looking at a plant. Are you getting it? In a plant, you're looking at a tall plant and short plant. Now here, we're looking at what? Different plants. Now we said we have round and green seeds, round and green seed. And here we say that the round and green seed is what? Round is dominant. Are you getting it? Now, wrinkled and yellow. Wrinkled is recessive, yellow is dominant. I want you, you don't need someone to actually tell you when a character is dominant. I've told you that, one of the things you will see in a character, one of the things you will see in a particular generation, and you know that this man is dominant or recessive, is the capitalism of the character that was used. So if I'm talking about roundness and shortness, or roundness and wrinkled, and I say that capital R is for, dominant, which is roundness. You should know that when I'm talking about wrinkled, it is what? Small r, small r. Don't go and say wrinkled is now W. No, 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 that's not how it works. Please, that's not how it works. So what happens is round is capital R, which is dominant. Now, green seed is recessive because you can already see here that it is what? In a small letter. I hope you're following. It is what? Recessive. Now, wrinkled is a recessive of round. Round is dominant, wrinkled is recessive. Green is dominant, yellow is recessive. These are the parent generation. Now, when we bring out the gametes, look at what we're going to do. Look at what we're going to do. Because in the F1 generation, you know what happens in monohybrid? In the F1 generation, let's say, look at this place now. This on its own, a monohybrid cross. Here now, this is a monohybrid cross. On its own here is a monohybrid cross. Are you getting it? So what I want you to do, as I'm explaining this, is if you use this as a monohybrid cross, you know what you get? All of them will have a similar character. There will be what we call a heterozygous character, no longer a homozygous. So this is a monohybrid cross. Individually, this round and green is a monohybrid, because in monohybrid, we are looking at, is it tall, is it short, is it round, is it green? Are you getting it? So we're looking at the shape and the color. I hope you are getting it. Please, if you're following me, just write "I'm following," so that I know I'm actually following. I'm doing something here. I want to be seeing your vibe. If you're following, type on the chat box "I'm following," so that we continue. I want to see you say "I'm following." If you're not following, say "I'm not." I will re-explain. That's my job. I'm not afraid to do that. Okay, you're following. Thank you so much. I'm happy that you are. Now let's continue. Now I said that here we have a round and green seed. We have a wrinkled and yellow. I told you that round is dominant. Green is what? Is recessive. Wrinkled is recessive. Yellow is dominant. So when I cross, I will have a heterozygous character in this individual monohybrid, because when two monohybrid comes, we have what? A dihybrid. I want you to understand that. So this is a monohybrid. This is a monohybrid. So when we cross all, the F1 generation will be capital R, small r. That is heterozygous. Here to capital R, small r, capital Y. Here is capital R, small y. Small r, capital Y. Are you getting it? So this is what? This is the result of the F1 generation in this dihybrid. The hybrid is a series of monohybrid coming together. So this is the F1 gamete. Round and yellow. Round and what? And yellow. Remember that the round is heterozygous. Capital R, small r. Heterozygous, pair of contrasting characters. The yellow too is what? Is heterozygous, pair of contrasting characters. That's capital Y, small y. So now look at the F1. In the F1 generation, this is it here. So we want to actually get our, dihybrid. That's the F2 generation of this dihybrid cross. I don't know if you're getting it. So we already have that capital R, small r, capital Y, small y. Are you getting it? Now we want to get, how do we actually identify our what? Our second filial generation to actually get 9:3:3:1. I hope you're following. Now, we'll use the offspring of this F1 generation to self-fertilize. I hope you're following. We do what? We self-fertilize. Now, when we self-fertilize, you know where we're going to be having? When this man crosses with this big man here, we'll be having capital R, capital Y. Capital R, capital Y. When this capital R goes to this small y, we have capital R, small y. Now, we'll come to the smallest r. We have small r, capital Y. We have small r, small y. Hey, I hope you're following. So this is the garment to cross, you understand, to get our F2. Now, to get our F2 now, you know what we are going to do? We are going to put all these things in a tabular form. This is what we call the gametic checkerboard. Are you getting it? We use the word, this checkerboard to cross. So we'll get this. This is the F1, selfing the F1 garment. This is the F1 here. So we'll now self it here. This is capital R-Y, capital R, capital Y. This is it here. Capital R, small y. This is it here. Small r, capital Y. This is it here. Small r, small y. This is it here. Now, this same thing will come over here so that we self-fertilize them together. So that we have this multiply this, like this crosses with this. We're having capital R, small y, capital Y, capital Y. The second one, we'll first of all finish with this, line first. Are you getting? We'll finish with the first row, and then we'll go to the second row, the third row, and the last row. So for the first row, we use this times this. This crosses with this. I'm bringing in calculative words. I'm sorry, But the main thing is you understand that this man is actually crossing this. This cross with this. You understand? This one cross with this too. This one cross with this. This one cross with this. We'll come to the second one. So when this crosses with this, you see what it has here. Now, capital R times this. We're having capital R, capital Y, small y. I told you something when we started. Dominant usually comes first. There is no way a recessive character can come and be overshadowing the dominant. It's never done. Whenever you say it's an abomination, please call me. It's an abomination. So that is it. Now we self-fertilize, and at the end of the day, we form this. This is what is being formed. See, it's small one. Now see here, capital R, capital Y, small r, small y. So when they cross together, the R will come first, which is the shape before the color. So capital R, small r, capital Y, capital Y. So at the end of the day, this is what we have in our dihybrid cross. So I want to actually look at something in our evolution before we, answer some questions. I know we don't have time. Now look at evolution. Now remember that when we're talking about evolution, we're talking about how do, man get to come into play. We see that there is a lot of science behind the theory of evolution. Scientists and researchers have, done intensive studies to show how living things evolve and how traits and characteristics passed on from generation to generation. You remember that when we're talking about this transmission of traits from parents to offspring, without the idea of evolution, we cannot actually say that, okay, this is how it came to play. That's why I'm talking about heredity and evolution together. Because when you hear about evolution, we're looking at this thing that we are seeing today. Who started it? How did it start? Are you getting it? What is the definition behind what I'm seeing today? That is evolution in a layman's understanding. That's evolution. When Charles Darwin began to say that, individuals evolved from ape, we came from chimpanzee and all that. That's evolution. Because there is a particular characteristic that exists before and that we are seeing it at some point. Are you getting it? That's evolution. Now remember that Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, he mentioned something when also talking about evolution. I'm trying to explain the relationship with this ape story and man story. Now, remember that there's what we call a vestigial organ. When we're talking about a vestigial organ, Jean-Baptiste Lamarck said that there are organs in your body that the more you use that organ, the more they become effective. When you stop using those organs will become ineffective. Now, when they become ineffective, that's what we call what? The vestigial organ. Now, for those of you that write with your right hand, do you know why you can be able to write effectively with your right hand? When you spend to write with your left hand, you are getting, a rubbish of yourself. It's because of what? Your ability to continuously use this right hand effectively. So that even if from when I was 2, I've been using my right hand to write, you understand? I've been writing with this right, but this, as I am now, I want to use my left hand to, write something down. It's not going to work. In as much as I'm going to write something, but it's going to be a mess of itself because this is not the organ I use effectively. So the more I use an organ, the more effective it becomes. The more you read, the more effective you understand. Any day you stop reading, that's the day your brain becomes weak. Do you know why? Those that graduated 10 years ago cannot be able, like, you can't compete your brain with theirs because their brain is weak and they don't actually use it often and on. I'm talking about in terms of education, because even as you are sleeping, your brain is still active at some point. So I don't want to go to that direction. Let's focus on evolution. Now, the more you use, the more it becomes what? Effective. Now, there is an organ in your body called appendix. You no longer use appendix again. It's a vestigial organ. Coccyx is a vestigial organ. Are you getting it? These are the organs that we no longer use. So before now, this organ was in place. Before now, this organ was effective. Are you getting it? That's why, Charles Darwin can be able to say that man evolved from what? From ape. That's evolution. If you can see what I wrote down here in my slide, we have Homo erectus, a man that existed before, we're having the Homo sapiens, and all that. So all these things goes from one stage to the other, from one stage to the other, till it comes to a particular place where we are today, which is what? The Homo sapiens. Me and you, we are the Homo sapiens. So we started from this, this to this, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, and all that. See, we have what? Homo sapiens. Are you getting it? That's the story of evolution. Some scientists begin to say that living organism arises from, the waste material that you see in the street. They also have their backings. At some point, we call those things hypotheses, because sometimes it has not been completely proven. But the proven one I'm talking about is this, use and disuse of organ, human being evolving from ape. That's evolution. So because you can be able to, track down why you can be able to, sleep and leave your one eye open, why you can be able to reason properly, this can be also what? We can trace them to your parents. We can trace them to your, pedigrees. Pedigrees are ancestors, those that existed before us. That's evolution. Are you getting it? So the science of heredity helps us to, track it in the right way. So evolution explains that this is actually possible. This has happened before. It is happening now. Now, when you begin to look at giraffe, for instance, giraffe has, they started with shorter neck. Now, because they, their feeding relationship, they feed on trees. Now, when the shorter ones feed on the trees that, their neck can reach, those who can't actually, stretch up to get food that are in the toppermost part of the tree die off. You understand? Those who can continue to stretch, they continue to stretch. That's still the use and disuse of organs. They continue to use those organs before the neck elongates, before the neck grows what? Taller. Are you getting it? That's why you can see giraffe today having a very, taller neck than expected. So that is, by the way, that's all about what? Evolution. I want you to understand. Now, I want us to look at the Q&A. These are questions that I want us to look at. I will explain these two questions, but because of time, I know that some of us, we have another class by 1. So because of time, I will be, I will answer these two questions and then we'll continue in the chat box. I will answer these two questions, we'll continue in the chat box. Chat box not in this Zoom. I'll be sending questions on our WhatsApp platform. So answer it. If you don't, I will be answering. I will solve it in the book, send it out. I'll use voice note to explain. Now let's look at this question. Remember, I've explained monohybrid and dihybrid cross. Now, in a breeding program, I will do number 1 and you do number 2. You will do it and you give me the answer in the chat box. I want this class to be interactive. That's why I say let's interact, because I want us to interact with each other. Do you understand? This is not just for me to talk and leave. No, I want us to interact. Now look at this question. In a breeding program, a cross was made between 2 breeding cowpea types, one with round seed and the other with what? Wrinkled seed. If roundness is dominant, remember when we were talking about roundness being dominant, let me show you something. Okay, it's like I'll use the whiteboard, or okay, because of time, let me just explain here. Okay, now look at, now we say that roundness, one with roundness and the other with wrinkled seed. We say if roundness is dominant, why wrinkled seed is recessive? Now, in the first filial generation, all seed produced will be, we're not talking about the second filial now, first filial, because that's the simplest part. If you can't get the first filial, what are we actually doing? So now, because they said, I will use my pen to do something. Now they say that roundness, we can say that roundness can be capital R for roundness, and is dominant. Remember, wrinkled seed is recessive. You can say small r. Now, in the first filial generation, you can cross. Now, when you cross, that's the first capital R goes with the small r. We have capital R, small r. The second capital R goes with the second small r. We have first capital R goes with the second small r. We have capital R, small r. The next capital R goes to the small capital, the first small r. We have capital R, small r. The next one, capital R, small r. Now the question says, in the first filial generation, all seeds will be. Now, all my first filial generation, guess what? All of them are what? Are heterozygous roundness. Are you getting it? All of them are 100% round. So my answer is what? C. C is the correct answer because I have capital R, small r, capital R, small r, capital R, small r, capital R, small r. So we have what? 100% roundness. I don't know if you're getting what I'm saying. So now, in this second question, I want you to solve it. I'll be waiting for you. So whenever you are done, I will continue. That's the last thing we'll do in this class. So I want to hear from you. So solve the second question. If you don't understand it, you also write in the chat box. I want you guys to try something. So solve the second question and give me the answer. Please, if you're following, just write something in the chat box. If you're following, write something in the chat box, as well as, solve the questions needed. I'm so happy that you guys are here. I just believe that you are following, that you know what, like you're understanding what I'm saying here, because these questions are not ordinary. It's something that you need to understand. Okay, you're following. I love that. I love that. I love that. So answer the question. Answer the question. I want you to answer the question. I say in a breeding program cross. Okay, E. She said E. E. Okay, Julie said E. Elizabeth Ajayi said E. Okay, I don't know the answer, so we'll do it together. We'll confirm. Any other person that is dropping something? E. Wow, everyone E. Wow. Let's hope that E is the right answer. Okay, let's try something. Now, in a breeding program, a cross was made between two breeding cowpeas, one with round seed and the other with wrinkled seed. Now, one with round seed, the other with wrinkled seed. If roundness is dominant, that's capital R, and while wrinkled seed is recessive, small r, small r. In the first filial generation, all the seeds produced will be. Let's cross it again. Okay, this is almost the same thing. Wow, this is almost the same thing I did now. So the answer is 100% roundness because all of them will be heterozygous what? Round, which is 100% round. So I'm happy that you got, everything that we said here. So if you have a question, please drop your question. I'm available to answer your questions. I will continue sending a lot of these questions in the group chat. I'll be available. I'll be sending this question in the group chat. So do well to answer. It will be in form of, a poll. So if you have a question, use the chat box. If you have a question, say I have a question so that I can wait and, hear from you. So if you don't have, just say I don't have, I understood all. If you have a question, you ask. If you don't have, say I don't have, I understood all that was explained. If you have a question, do well to ask. I'm here for you. I'm glad that we followed. Do you have a question? Okay, I dropped the question. I dropped the question in the chat box. Since you don't have a question, I dropped my own question in the chat box. I want you people to answer it. I dropped one question in the chat box. I want you guys to answer it. Since you don't have, let me ask my own question. Give me the answer if you know it. We've explained it here, so I want you to give me an answer. I want you to give me an answer. I dropped a question in the chat box. If you know, you give an answer. Now remember, okay, while you are trying to get the answer, I will say something. While you are trying to, get the answer, I will say something. Now remember that another way to actually get, going in this JAMB exam, it's not just to, know everything, but try as much as possible to know in your own perspective. You understand? I want you to make sure you put in the work. If you don't read, there is no way you're going to, excel. Unless you're going to do, James and John. And if James said yes, you write James. No. Sometimes you might not know the answer. You know what you will do? I don't want you to just go home without writing anything. No. Like in this question now, okay, a lot of people are answering. In this question now, the question says, farmers' assumption that the seed from a good harvest will produce a good yield is explained by the theory of evolution, adaptation, variation, heredity. Now, having understood what evolution is, are you getting it? We've already talked about evolution. Evolution is trying to, look into how did, this living organism came into existence.
Adaptation, we're looking at, an organism being able to survive in its environment without external, factor coming in. On its own, it's been able to survive. Just like, some of us can survive in, in the northern part of Nigeria. Some of us can survive when we, travel out to Russia or every other country that is very, very cold. We are adapted to the environment. Now, variation, we're looking at the differences that exist. So when you look at these three options, you don't need a suicide to tell you that the answer is heredity. Are you getting it? Because you're looking at the ability of a character to being transferred from what? Parents to what? Offspring. Are you getting it? So that is it. And the answer is this. So thank you everyone for answering. Thank you so much. I will be ending the session here. I'll be ending the session here. So what you do for me is come to the group chat. I'll be sending questions before the day ends. We'll be answering questions within the week. I've prepared a lot of things for you in this particular topic. If you have your question on any concept, don't forget to ask me. I am here to answer. That's why I want you to be reading. In fact, the more you read, the more you get concept. So any concept you are reading and you don't understand, that's why I'm your biology teacher. So do well to, you have my number there on WhatsApp. Send me a message. I'm not going to block you. No. I will answer your question. Are you getting it? So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate, and I'm happy, to being able to, have a class with you. It means a lot to me. So thank you so much. We see again when next we see. Have a lovely day and God bless you all. Bye for now.